Good morning, sixth graders. This morning we're moving on to work on solving equations. So today we are going to be taking 1 and 2 step equations and solving them for the variable. So in order to solve equations, we need to know what the inverse or the opposite is of each operation. So the opposite of addition would be subtraction. The opposite of subtraction is addition. The opposite of multiplication is division. And the opposite of division is multiplication. So, in order to solve equations, we work by doing the inverse operation. So our first step is to always isolate the variable. So that means to get the variable by itself. We do that by applying the inverse operation to our operation that we have. And then we check our answer by substituting it back in. So if you can see here, the inverse operation of division is multiplication. So we're going to multiply each side by 2. And so we get our answer to be 36. So we substitute 36 back in for the variable, and we get 36 divided by 2 is 18, so 18 equals 18. So let's try a couple of those. So the inverse operation of subtraction would be addition. So we add 9 to each side. Sometimes it's easier to draw a line down to separate out our sides. So now, what do we have left on this side? Negative 9 plus 9 is 0. That is why we use our inverse operations, because it undoes what we have done on each side. So now we're isolating it so that we just have x left. And 12 plus 9 is 21. So we have x equals 21. Now let's look at our next one. We have 5 times x equals 60. So we would do our inverse operation, which is of multiplication is division. So we would divide each side by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1, so we have 1x left on this side. 60 divided by 5 is 12. So remember, you can always check your answer by substituting it back in. 5 times 12 is 60. 21 minus 9 is 12. So now let's look at the next one. So we have 13 plus x. So to get rid of the 13, we do its inverse. We subtract. So we're going to subtract 13 from each side. We have to do it from each side of the equation to balance out what we're doing to the one side. Because if we only subtracted 13 from this side, we would be unbalanced over here. So we always have to balance out our equation. So we take x equals 62 minus 13. We have to regroup. 9 be 49. For number 4, the opposite of division is multiplication. So we multiply each side by 11. And so we get x equals, we take 132 times 11. We get 1,452. Let's see. So we take 21 minus 9 equals 12. 12 equals 12. 5 times x, so we take 5 times 12 equals 60. 60 equals 60. 13 plus 49 equals 62. 62 equals 62. And x, so 1,452 divided by 11 equals 132. So 132 equals 132. So let's try some on your own. Let's try number 5. 4 plus x equals 12. So we have our inverse operation would be subtraction. So we subtract 4 from each side. So on the left side we have x, and on the right side we have 8. Let's go down to check your work. 4 plus 8 equals 12. 12 equals 12. Let's try number 6. 8 times x equals negative 64. The inverse of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide each side by 8. So x equals negative 64 divided by 8 would be a negative 8. So we have 8 times a negative 8 equals negative 64. Negative 64 equals a negative 64. Number 7, x minus 15 equals 2. So we take, and our inverse would be addition. So we add 15 to each side. So x equals 17. 17 minus 15 equals 2. 2 equals 2. Our last one, number 8. X divided by 3 equals 9. So our inverse would be multiplication. So we multiply each side by 3. So we have x left on the left side. 9 times 3 is 27. So let's check our answer. 27 divided by 3 equals 9. 9 equals 9. So that's how we do one-step solving equations. So now we're going to work on adding one more step. So really that usually means that we're either going to do an addition or subtraction, and a multiplication or a division to get our answer. As it usually means that we have a coefficient and a constant that we need to get rid of in order to isolate x. So our overall goal is still to isolate the variable and the coefficient. So we first perform the inverse operation. Then we need to isolate the variable by getting rid of the coefficient. We do that through performing the inverse operation. And then our last step is to check our answer. So if we look, here we're isolating our coefficient and our variable by performing the inverse operation. So the inverse of subtraction is addition. Then we move on to isolate our variable by performing the inverse operation. So remember, the operation when a number is next to a variable is multiplication. So the inverse would be division. So we get x equals 12. So we come over here to check it by plugging 12 in for our variable. So they take 2 times 12, which is 24. Then 24 minus 3, which is 21. And we get 21 equals 21. So we've correctly solved the equation. So let's look at a few together. So our first one is 2x minus 10 equals 18. So our first step is to isolate our 2x. So that means we have to get rid of the minus 10. So the inverse of subtraction is addition. So we're going to add 10 to each side. So on the left we have 2x equals 10 plus 18 is 28. Now we need to isolate our variable. So the inverse of multiplication is division. So we divide each side by 2. So x equals 14. We can check it down here. So we have 2 times 14 . 2 times 14 minus 10 equals 18. So we end up with 28 minus 10 equals 18. And we have 18 equals 18. So we found the correct answer. Let's look at number 2. So we're going to try and isolate x divided by 4. So that means we need to get rid of our 3. So since it's a positive 3, that means the inverse would be subtracting. So we're going to subtract 3 from each side. So on the left we have x divided by 4 equals 10. So now the inverse of a division is multiplication, so we multiply each side by 4. So x equals 40. We can check it down here. So we have 3 plus 40 divided by 4 equals 13. 40 divided by 4 is 10. 13 equals 13. Let's try one more together. So we do 10 plus 7x equals 45. Minus 10, minus 10. 7x equals 35. Divide each side by 7. We get x equals 35 divided by 7 would be 5. So we take and we substitute 5 in. 10 plus 7 times 5 equals 45. 7 times 5 is 35. plus 10. So 45 equals 45. And number 4, we do the opposite to get x divided by 5. So we add 11 to each side. We have x minus 5 equals 11. 11, 21. Then we multiply each side by 3. So x would equal 63. Wow, that was wrong. Can't read my own writing on here. Let's try that again. Add 11. So x divided by 5 equals 21. Multiply each side by 5. X equals 505. So we take 105 divided by 5 minus 11 equals 10. 105 divided by 5 goes in there twice, goes in there once, so it's 21. Minus 11 equals 10, so 10 equals 10. So I want you to try, we're going to do 1 and 2, and I want you to try 1 and 2. So 1 is 4x minus 12 equals 4. So find the value of x. So our inverse operation to get 4x by itself would be to add 12. So we're going to add 12 to each side. So negative 12 plus a positive 12 would leave us with 4x equals 16. Now we have to isolate x. The inverse of multiplication is division. So we divide each side by 4. X equals 4. We can check in. 4 times 4 minus 12 equals 4. So 16 minus 12 equals 4. 4 equals 4. Now let's try number 2. 8 minus x divided by 3 equals 6. So what is the value of x? So our inverse first to isolate our 8 would be minus 8 from each side. Now we have negative x divided by 3 equals a negative 2. So we need to get rid of that negative with the x2. So we're going to multiply each side by a negative 3. So x equals 6, because negative 2 times negative 3 is 6. Let's check our answer to make sure it works. So we have 8 minus 6 divided by 3 equals 6. So we have 8 minus 2 equals 6. So we have 6 equals 6. So really, when we're solving equations, it's just about finding that inverse and working our way down by doing the opposite to each side. If you have any questions or you need help, make sure you reach out.